What's the best way to name a trick? And what do you do if the person who named it did a bad job? Can we just veto it? Welcome back to Rad Rat Video, a channel all about skateboarding. I answer questions from all different corners of the skateboarding world. I like to cover skateboarding in different forms of media whenever possible. I got a handful of questions for you. The first one is from Roni, who says, are streets in the US really as smooth as they seem sometimes in videos? I mean, it has to rain there sometimes, and cars and bikes and whatnot would have zero grip, right? Or is it just so hot that the ground dries up quickly despite the smoothness? I thought this was a very interesting question because the US is much bigger than you think it is. From like width-wise, it's like 4,500 kilometers wide. It's like 2,800 miles, I think. But like there's a lot of different things. We got mountains, we got deserts, we've got like really humid, more tropical type places. We've got like tundra almost, where I was from. We've got all kinds of different things. To just say like the streets in the US, it's huge. Okay, California, which is where most of the skateboarding footage you're seeing is from, is much different than where I was from. Like I've only been there a couple times, but like it doesn't rain. It's always nice out. The ground is always smooth. I remember I brought my skateboard with me the first time. It was like a trip with my family, but I was just at the beach somewhere, and I was just skating down this sidewalk, and it was just perfectly smooth. There's like waxed benches and stuff that are all around the place. Like you can just skate anywhere. Like it seems a lot easier than where I was from, where there was like nothing. You know, I was on a dirt road. Everything is super rough. Concrete is like torn up all over the place. You can't ride down the sidewalk in my hometown. Like the different squares of the sidewalk don't line up anymore. And so there's always like gaps, and you'd always hit stuff, and there's always sticks and rocks and stuff. Like you can't skate on the sidewalk there. Here in Colorado, you can, because they like, if the sidewalk squares get off, they like shave off the corners. So it'll be like a little bit wavy, but it's still like there's no edges that you would catch on. And there are some spots here to skate. But it still snows a lot. You know, like it's a big difference. If you want to see something different, look up footage from Boston or New York. You'll see more like rough sort of concrete and asphalt and stuff like that. But yeah, the US is very big. Don't picture it all just being California. As nice as that would be. All right. Next question is from Jacob. I was watching the Lake Havasu SLS competition and noticed the commentators, Jeff Rowley mainly, calling two different tricks a 270 lip. The first trick had the skater approaching the rail backside and spinning frontside, where a 90 would have landed him in a board slide. Or the opposite. So like, should one of these tricks be called a 270 board slide, and if so, which one? So this one is, I mean, it's complicated. Like it's a hard thing. It's just like a belief almost to say which one is which, because you could fit the definition either way. Because like the definition of a lip slide normally is like you pop the tail, then the back truck goes over, right? If you spin 270, like the front truck kind of goes over. I mean, it might not, but then like the back truck would go over at the end. Like you could say both. For me, if you watch the approach and then you close your eyes for a second and then you watch the slide, it's how that would look. Okay, so like if you are approaching front side, and let's say here's the handrail, you approach front side, you spin 270 backside, and then you slide forward. That's as if you approach front side and you slid forward, so that would be a lip slide. So for me, a 270 lip slide is the easier way. To pop up like a board slide but keep going all the way around would be a lip slide. And if you were to pop up front side, go like a lip slide but keep going, that would be a 270 board slide to me. Now, I think that makes the most sense, but you could make an argument for the other way too. So it kind of is what it is. And apparently even pros are not consistent with how they name it. So to me, 270 lip slide, 270 board slide. That's how I think it should be. All right, next question from Andrew. Why don't street skaters use freestyle wheels? Even if you were just landing rail on accident, the offset would make falls and shoe damage less likely. Is there some downside using freestyle wheels as street wheels? I've been doing it lately, and I don't understand why it's not common practice. I don't see any clear downsides. By the way, me and my friend smoked a blunt and watched your skating video. We were getting so hyped to go outside and try all sorts of weird tricks on flat ground. Thanks for the inspiration. Well, thank you for the kind words. So I tried this too. If you're not familiar with freestyle wheels, I don't have a freestyle board nearby, but the wheels are more wide and they're offset. So like the inside is still normal, and then like the nut will be here, but there's still more wheel that like covers the nut. Like it's an extra wide wheel, and that way when actually the wheels on this board are almost like, I don't know if you can even see that. Like imagine it being like that, where the nut is like sunken into the wheel. That's how it is. So when you're on the rail, you're on wheels and you're not on the axle nuts. And that is a good thing for some people. I don't even like freestyle wheels on my freestyle board now. I don't know. It doesn't help as much. And I like the trucks to be smaller than the board. And when you buy a freestyle wheel, you never know exactly how much extra width it is. It's complicated. But I've tried freestyle wheels on a street board too, and I was trying to make the perfect hybrid board where I could do both types of things. Because if I go skate, I take 2 boards with me. If I want to do some freestyle stuff, I have to have the freestyle board. I can't, like, there's some crossover, but you don't want to get good at certain tricks knowing that you have to do it on another board on different times, you know? So I was trying to come up with a hybrid board, and I put freestyle wheels on a street board, and for the most part, you don't really tell. It's not that big of a difference, but there are some. Because the wheels are more wide, anything with friction on the wheels is a little bit worse. Like if you do like a backside flip and you like to slide out at the end, that would be harder. Like a crooked grind for me, that was the big one that I could tell. We have this big extra wide wheel that you're locked into sliding on is a little bit worse. So like, yeah, for me, it was a downside without a lot of upside. Yeah, it protects your shoe if you would have landed on the axle nut, but like, that's not that big of a deal. Okay, the next question is also freestyle inspired, unsurprisingly, because it was submitted by Freestyle for Life. It says, do you think freestyle skateboarding will ever be accepted in the mainstream of skate culture again? There are some great freestyle skaters around the world, but unfortunately they're mostly overlooked by the industry. I know some major skate companies such as Powell and Soltec dabble in it, but in most cases they don't show a good deal of public support. Also, shout out to some great modern freestyle companies such as Moonshine Skateboards, Mode, Waltzed, and Decomposed. Side note, when they do publicly show a skater doing freestyle, that skater also does ramp skating and or street, not only freestyle. Yeah, I think that's an important thing for your average skater to like understand what they're seeing. You know, like if you see someone do like a really technical flip in, flip out grind, and you can like set like, okay, that was crazy hard. I can imagine how hard that is. And then they do this weird freestyle trick. You can get an idea of how tough that is. You know, like if it's just freestyle, you've never skated freestyle before, you only know about street, and there's like a whole video part that's nothing but freestyle. You might as well be watching someone on like a bike or a scooter or something like that. Like you wouldn't really understand what's going on as much. But if it's mixed in, there's a little bit of street, there's a little bit of ramps, and then the guy does some freestyle too, then it's a little bit easier to like keep track of, I think. Like I feel like that's a big part of it. Like freestyle is so complicated to really understand. There's so many more things to learn and so many different trick names and like all that type of stuff that most people just don't know. If you add a couple of tricks in to a mostly street part, it'd be like an interesting new thing. If it was nothing but freestyle, I think you would lose a lot of people who aren't into freestyle. And it would take a lot for a company to like risk doing like a full nothing but freestyle thing. The different brands that are out there right now. There used to be, they would put out, I have like tapes, like old freestyle video tapes, and they existed, but those brands never got big. It was always a small niche thing, and companies aren't necessarily going after the small niche things. I don't know. We'll see. Like, it could get popular enough that bigger brands decide to sponsor like a only freestyle guy, but I don't think it's very likely. I don't know. We'll see. All right. Last question of the day. Do I not have your name? Sorry about that. Let's see if I can look that up. It says, "Hey, Radrat, big fan. Love your opinions on and views on skateboarding. I, for one, think there is still some face value to naming tricks, just as you do. But my question is, do you think when a trick is invented, it should have a goofy or funny name, a name rooted more toward the inventor, or a name that breaks the trick down more literally? What is your opinion?" I'm going to try to find your email and put your name here. It didn't survive as I copy and pasted it. But it depends on what the trick is. So if the trick could be named with terminology that exists already, I think you really need to use that. Like if you were the first person to do a 540 flip, well, a 360 flip exists. Everyone would understand what you meant if you said a 540 flip. If you decided to name it after yourself, that would suck. Like you kind of just need to call it what it is. If you can just put the word double in there and it explains it, you're good to go. Don't try to name something like that. That would be a little bit weird. A trick that is describable but would take a while, like would take a sentence instead of just a couple words, then it's good to be named. Example would be the Mike Mo flip, which is like an impossible underflip, but the underflip isn't at the end. It's like halfway through. So having to explain what that is, it makes more sense to just use the name. A Muska flip is a frontside flip that goes vertical and you catch when it's done and not halfway through. Like, you can describe that trick, but it makes sense for that to have a name. And those are both just named after the person, but you could give it a name too if you wanted to, and that would be okay. What about if you were to invent like a category of trick? So I would think that would need a name. I talked to a guy named Finger Flip Guy on Instagram. I'm gonna see if I can get his permission to show this trick that he was doing and showing me. It's like a nollie 360 shove it late knee flip. So if I can't show it, what he does is he stands on the tails like this. He pops the nose and then gets his knee kind of like in the way. The board pops up, then it hits his knee, and then it goes crazy and it flips and spins. So it's like a nollie knee flip. So like you could call it that, or he could name that something. He hasn't I don't think he's mentioned a name when we talked about it, but you could call it nollie 360 knee flip, but like that's not even that clear. Like in that case, it seems like it would make the most sense to name that. And you also have to be careful because it's nollie. You have to include nollie. You could name it something, but then if you figure out how to do it off the tail, well then now you have to retroactively call the other version nollie. Like you have to be really careful about how you name something so that it makes sense. And if you call it something that doesn't work, or like it has to have the spin in it, but then you figure out how to spin it the other way, is that going to be a different trick, or are you going to name is complicated? And what happens if someone does it wrong? What if they come up with a really dumb name? Example would be the Kiwi flip, which was the point of the name was that it was going to be dumb. Like that was kind of the idea. It's where you like use your heel in a front shove and like underflip it with your heel. Call it a Kiwi flip. Now, if you hate that name, what are you going to do about it at this point? There's no other name for it. You could do like a back heel assisted laser flip. you could call it. But if you were very specifically talking about that style of doing it, you kind of just have to call it the Kiwi flip, because that's the name that there is. The most important part about trick names is being able to communicate the meaning and understand it. That's the most important part. And if you don't like the name that's out there and you just decide to start calling it something else, people aren't going to know what you mean, and then it gets lost. So it's a really complicated thing. If everyone can agree that this old name is dumb and we should change it, then fine. But for the most part, like, what the creator of it comes up with is generally what it's going to be stuck being called, unless there's a really good reason not to. An example would be right here, if you want to check that one out, about why we don't call it the mute grab anymore, or at least why I don't, and why Tony Hawk and the Tony Hawk games don't anymore, which is a interesting story and a good reason why a trick name should change. But you have to have, but that's Tony Hawk saying, in this video game that 1 million people will play, it's going to be called something different. Everyone's going to want to know why. Here's the reason. That's a lot different from when I mention a trick, I just call it something different and I don't explain why, you know? So yeah, if you're going to name a trick, be careful, consider it, take your time and consider different ways that the trick could be done. Make sure it hasn't been named already, and try not to screw us over by naming it something too dumb. But that is it for now. If you have any questions of your own, go to radratvideo.com and submit them through the form on the homepage. If you like the channel, you can subscribe, you can hit the like button, you can join here on YouTube, you can sponsor me on Patreon, you can tell all your friends, and you can comment, and you can hang out for the next video. I will see you then. Thanks for hanging out.